Hello and welcome everyone. Hope you are doing great. Today we'll be starting a very professional tutorial. Guys, nowadays people claim to be BIM experts, modeling experts, Revit users, professional Revit users, and so on. Question is, do these people know how truly they can manage and coordinate a BIM project though? Well, let me tell you this, guys. Just because you're able to create a model or work on a modeling project doesn't mean that you are able to manage and coordinate it. It doesn't make you a completely professional user or an expert. Even having several years of experience doesn't mean anything without enough understanding. To put this simply, guys, this understanding matters because with it comes the ability to manage and coordinate a BIM project. Now, this understanding is one of the characteristics of a BIM coordinator, and in this tutorial, we'll actually be focusing on this concept on BIM coordination. Now, during the course, I'm going to try explaining everything as short and concise and also as simply as possible. But remember, guys, you would always need further practice. Now, we'll be covering topics such as the importance of coordination, the responsibilities, the possible issues in case of lack of coordination, and so on. Basically, we're going to try to shine a new light on this whole concept, guys, not just clicking on some items and discussing some options. By the way, guys, this course could be quite beneficial for different people with different responsibilities and goals, such as modelers who want to become more predominant, or experienced users who want to become coordinators, managers who want to learn how to communicate better with their coordinators in a project, and at the end, beginners, people who just started their work, their journey within this whole field. Guys, we're going to try to cover many different and, well, you can say beneficial concepts and discussions. As an example, we're going to see how exactly we can find and also solve the issues, the possible issues is better to say, in between different disciplines within a project. And more importantly, guys, we're going to see what exactly a BIM coordinator does. For real, though. I mean, not just a definition on paper. The goals that I'm trying to achieve is to help you understand your roles and responsibilities, communicate as professionally as possible. To be more exact, helps you explain and defend your works. Alright then, so this was a quick introduction to our course. Now we can begin our work, guys. I've prepared some slides for you and we're going to go through them one by one. FYI, in order to understand this whole concept of coordination as best and as completely as possible, we're going to try to cover up the points both theoretically and project-based. Okay, so now we can start our work, or we can begin our discussion by going through the different roles that we have within a BIM project. As you can see, we got modeler, specialist, coordinator, and manager. To be honest, guys, by just looking at this very slide, you would realize that the concept of BIM doesn't really refer to a single job, a single process. It's a journey. It's more like a path. And along this path, we have three main factors: technology, knowledge, and experience. Now we kind of have the same factors up here as well, only somehow with different names. Now, if we consider each factor as a step, the required time for taking the steps are also pointed out here. And as you can see, step by step and gradually, our roles and responsibilities would in fact be increased. So in other words, we can say that our role, our impact on the project would be increased because of the decisions, for example, that we would or we have to make because we're in fact moving towards this managerial role. Now, first and foremost, we got the learning step specific to BIM modelers. Obviously, the defined roles and responsibilities here would be regarding the whole modeling process. For example, creating 3D and geometrical models using relevant graphical software such as Revit. Also, working based on specific standards such as ISO, creating details such as plans and schedules, and then executing the coordinator's demands as precisely as possible. To be more exact, the coordinators would check out the primary model, then they would raise some questions, issues, and problems that modelers should try to work on. The required skills here would be familiarity with the target software, then working with different types of families, working on different types of models, Also being able to work with different types of data and information, being familiar with the concept of import and export, being familiar with the discipline, and also a bit of execution knowledge. Guys, BIM modelers should understand their roles completely. One very important point regarding this matter is the fact that they don't really have to make crucial decisions or, for example, coordinate anything, or you can say finding problems like clashes. I mean, their main responsibility would be regarding execution and execution only. Now, after spending some time and gaining some knowledge and experience, you would enter the second step, BIM specialist. At this stage, alongside creating the models, you would also have analytical responsibilities as well, for example, for checking the models and information. And this would actually be the main difference in between a BIM specialist and BIM modeler, guys, except for the whole experience thing. Let me put it in this way. A BIM modeler works according to commands and demands, but BIM specialist makes decisions, even technical ones. Now, a BIM modeler would be at a primary stage of this field, guys. So obviously, if you want to become a BIM specialist, you need to be a BIM modeler first. As for the required skills, except for all the required skill set in the first stage, I mean the modeling stage, we need professional modeling, we need information management, also we need models unification, we need the ability to work with 4D and 5D models. And also we need to be able to control the models. I'm talking about their qualities. So for example, a BIM specialist could actually transfer a Revit model into Navisworks, for example, for doing some further checking. Or as another example, a BIM specialist could actually prepare a model for a 4D conversion process. And this way, obviously, the 4D specialists don't really have to go through the whole thing and prepare the model from the scratch. So yeah, these are some simple examples on the required skills of a BIM specialist. Also, we need some, you can say, software-related skills, such as the familiarity with all the main disciplines. I mean, sure, their major might be architecture, for example, but they should actually be familiar with all the other disciplines, such as structure or MEP. Also, they should be familiar with other software, such as Navisworks, for controlling the models better. Alright, after gaining enough knowledge and experience in this stage, you would finally enter the next step, which is being a BIM coordinator, guys. Oh, and a very important point, a range or the scale that a BIM modeler covers would only be a model. Then the disciplines would be covered by the BIM specialist. A BIM coordinator covers the entire project. And at the end, the whole organization kind of answers to the BIM manager. Yeah, so these levels are actually quite important. We need to pay attention to them. Anyway, as I was saying, after gaining enough knowledge and experience, we would enter the third stage, the coordination stage, and our course would be about this whole concept, guys. To put this simply, within a BIM project, the responsibilities of a BIM coordinator would be executing, controlling, and coordinating the project. You know, imagine a bridge, a communicator, a connector in between all the prior steps and stages. Now, the managerial roles here cover managing the models, managing the communication, managing information exchange, and so on. Then here we have the concept of BIM interoperability, which basically covers the collaboration in between the software, such as Revit and Navisworks. Then, within the next step, we have the data and information management. Here we would basically control different concepts, such as information, such as naming conventions, such as LOD, level of information need, version, status, and so on. Within the technical and collaborative step, we would mostly be dealing with the concept of teamwork, like, for example, applying the BEP or clash detection, which is one of the most important parts of our work. So basically, guys, having said all of these, the main responsibilities of a BIM coordinator would be project control, or you can say a project quality control, also solving the issues in between the teams, preventing possible executive mistakes, cost reduction, speeding up the decision making. And to put this simply, guys, a BIM coordinator makes sure that there's absolutely no problem with the model, with the project, before actually executing it in real work. At the end, for the last stage, we have BIM manager. As you can see, we at least need like 8 years of experience for beginning this step. And by the way, guys, you actually need to be familiar with multiple softwares, for example, not just Revit. Now, as I said earlier, the range of responsibilities of a BIM manager covers an entire organization because they would basically define the required strategies for the organizations. Not only this, they would create the BEPs, they would specify the standards, managing all the teams and parties, communicating with the contractors, and making the crucial and main decisions. Guys, let me put it in this way. BIM modelers and specialists are technical parties, coordinators are executive parties, and managers are strategists. So basically, guys, one more time, if you want to go through this entire path and this entire field, these are all the required steps that you need to take. In other words, you would start from a technical and executive stage, then gradually you would move on to analytical stage, after that coordination, and then at the end, management. So yeah, basically, I tried to cover this entire path quite simply using the first slide, guys.